maybe some of the comments on that came in after a discussion on the mandatory quarantine, we should have done what China and New Zealand did and close our borders, says a listener. They're talking about what other European countries have and have not done. They need to look further east for guidance. A stricter lockdown is needed. Another says, what are people to do if not isolate in a hotel? We're all in isolation in our own homes here since March. We have a right to feel safe in our own country. What would you say to those, Eoghan?
I would just repeat what I said earlier. We're fighting travel, not COVID. This is actually going to do nothing to keep variants at bay or to reduce our numbers. And I noticed the New Zealand narrative, which turned up very early last year and was listened to, and the very obvious point was made by our medical authorities that we're not New Zealand. It's not 2 hours shortest flight to our nearest neighbour. It's not 7 hours shortest ferry to our nearest. We're a connected country in Europe. As other connected countries in Europe, even the islands in Europe have adopted more or less the same policy, which is self-isolation. The number of imported cases never got high across Europe. But what some countries have done is what your listener said, a complete lockdown, pulling all the international flights. Very interesting to see countries that are outside of Asia attempting that. What happened? Peru ended up with the highest death rate in the world from COVID. Czechia has consistently since March had over their 14-day per 100,000 cumulative, which is what the international measurement is. Ours is about 150, and it went up to 1,500 in January during that scary time. But Czechia has been around that 1,100, 1,200 all the way through. So the cause and effect are broken here. Pulling up the drawbridge doesn't keep the variants at bay. It doesn't help your caseloads, which we're actually getting under control. It's very good news. When there was more travel last summer, our caseloads were lower.
Yeah, the positivity rate, if you look at that, we don't hear enough about the good news.
Oh, it's really good news. We're below the Europe. We sat on the European average through most of autumn. We're well below it now. We're about 100 below it now. We're about 150. The European average is over 300. The really high case loads that countries like Serbia went from about 200 up past 1,000, brought it back down again. Portugal immediately after us went up over 1,000. There was an emergency crisis, brought it all the way back down. They're lower than us now. And then the countries that do pull up the drawbridge, I think listeners would have seen Prime Time highlighting the Isle of Man, and the Isle of Man at a lovely low rate went out of control all the way back up to about 4 times what Ireland's was without opening international travel. International travel bears no resemblance. There's no cause and effect between international travel and the COVID. And this notion that pulling international travel, pulling up the drawbridge will give us our old lives back and magic away our problem isn't true. What magics away the problem is local handling of it. New Zealand has a nurse and midwife-led health service. It doesn't have the hierarchies and the fiefdoms led by consultants that the Irish Health Service has, and all that. We knew before the start of this, the health service was held together with Band-Aid and sticking plaster, and it's coped quite well. But to say that countries that with better health services who managed their local infection rate better are instant sticking plaster solutions for Ireland's problem is daft. And I can't believe that we're still having that same argument when it was listened to by NPHET and by the department and by the government all those months ago. And the very obvious fact that we are not New Zealand dawned on everyone very quickly.